What a wonderful world. What a wonderful world.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today it's time to have a look at the third and final vehicle which is being added in the initial ideas for the Squadron activity improvements. What I mean by this is the new Squadron activity way that we're going to be able to get vehicles through the game while also researching the other vehicles that are in the game. Kind of a nice addition to Squadron stuff. If you want to see some stuff about it, the news post, the dev blog, I've left it in the description of this video, so you can go and check it. I've also done 2 videos in the past going through it, and also the Q&A, or the FAQ I should say, which came along with it. So what is the third vehicle? Well, we've had a look at a ground vehicle, we've had a look at an air vehicle, therefore the last one must be a naval vehicle. And yes, it is the SKR Pr.35, claimed in the news post as a rank 3 Soviet ship. This machine, to me, I don't think is actually going to be rank 3. The reason why I say this is it already has a tech tree equivalent, and that tech tree equivalent, PR159, which we'll get into, you know, how close they actually are. It's got moved down to rank 2 recently, so it doesn't really make sense to me to keep this thing at rank 3. But anyway, what we're going to do in this video is go through the history of these machines, how are they different from each other, and also talk about the impact of such a machine in the game. On top of this, I would like to thank Father Gentlespie and also MuhAbroomz for creating the custom missions that you see in the video here, showcasing the SKR Pr.35, as I said, the new ship that will be available pretty soon. So, what is the SKR Pr.35? Well, it's pretty simple as this. It's a Merca class frigate. And why is this important? So, there are 3 main types of what we would class as light frigates that the Soviets made during pretty much the 60s or 50s, you could probably say, to the 80s. So you've got the Petya class frigate, which is also known as the Project 159, which we already have in game. This was built in the, I can't remember exactly when it was built, in the 1950s, or at least designed in the 1950s, sorry, and built for the Soviet Navy in the 1960s. Then it was succeeded by the Merca class, MIRKA class frigate, which is the one that you see represented in the form of the SKR Pr.35. And also, this was made in the mid to late 60s, and this was succeeded by the Coney class frigate. Now, all of these are very similar with little subtle differences. So, let's go through the Merca class, what is it, and also how does it differ from the Petya class, and then we'll talk about what the Petya class is, since that seems to be where all of this stuff has pretty much stemmed from. So the first thing to understand is the Merca class, Petya class, and Coney class. These are all NATO reporting names. The Soviet Navy actually put them under the Soviet designation of Storozhevoy Korabi, or Korab, which is escort ship. And also you have Project 35, the Merca 1, and the Project 35M, which is the Merca 2. I'm pretty sure that we are getting the Merca 1 in-game, but I can't be fully sure. Now, the reason why the Merca class and also the Petya and the Coney class were created were for various roles, but the main one was anti-submarine warfare in shallow waters. So the reason why this was useful is, of course, around the time submarines were becoming incredibly prevalent as a threat to pretty much every navy over the world, and therefore a smaller ship had to be created to deal with this threat, and they came up with these classes of frigates. The difference between the Merca class and the Petya class, which you will be more used to, is the fact that it had 2 shafts with diesels, and gas turbine engines. The propellers are in tunnels, similar to water jets, and the machinery proved noisy and not very reliable. So you can see there's a lot more power on this machine compared to a Petya class frigate, but they only made 18 of these, so this one is definitely less than the Petya class. What is also interesting as well is the Merca class. All of them were retired. So there was 18 of them completed, and 18 of them have been retired by the time of the 1990s. The Petya class, which was before it, the Project 159 class, there is still 8 of them active out of the 54 that were created. Now, the Coney class, which also succeeded the Merca class, so this is the more modern version of the frigate, there was 14 of them completed. 7 of them are still active, and they've actually lost one to warfare, which is obviously out of all of the other ones. This one was the only one which has been lost. And the main differences between them, so you've got the Petya class, which let's call the standard, and then the Merca class improved on this, not really in weaponry, but definitely in engine power, even though, as I said, the engines themselves were quite unreliable. Then the Coney class added anti-ship missiles. So the Coney class has access to 4 SSN-2 anti-ship missile launchers, and also some depth charge and mine racks were fitted at the stern, whereas I believe the one that we have in game, the Merca class frigate, only has some depth charges on it. So on top of all of these specifications for the Merca class, the Coney, and the Petya, what armament are we looking at for this Merca class frigate? Well, it is as simple as this. So the Merca 1, which I believe is the one that we're seeing in game right now, has access to 5 16-inch or 400mm a set of 5 torpedoes. So basically a quintuple, I think is the word. So they're all in one singular file. It also has access to 4 76.2mm sets in 2 twin factions, so one on the front, one on the back of the boat, and these are rapid fire 76s compared to a lot of the other guns that we have at this tier. And on top of this, it has access to 4 sets of RBU 6000 rocket launchers on it. So it has 2 on the front of it and 2 on the back. The issue with this when it comes to the game is that you can only really fire 2 sets to one side and 2 sets to the other, and generally I haven't really found a use for rockets in the game. I don't really see them as really that useful. Maybe I might be wrong about this. What is interesting though is because of the configuration of all of these weapons, there is no primary gunner, secondary gunner, and AA gunner or tertiary gunner. Everything is controlled by the player. So the player has to control the 76s, then the rockets, then the torpedoes, and I'm guessing some depth charges at some point, even though right now it doesn't seem like we can control them. So on top of all of this, the difference between the Merca 1 and the Merca 2, as I said, I believe this is the Merca 1, the Merca 2 had 10 16-inch 400mm torpedoes, so it doubles its torpedoes by 2. And then it actually lessened the rockets by half. So basically you're getting more torpedoes on the Merca 2 and less rockets. From an in-game point of view, this to me sounds a hell of a lot better than, what we would be having if we get the Merca 1, which is the one that you see. On top of this, if you actually just look at the torpedoes, something interesting is afoot. So these are not your regular torpedoes, or at least compared to the rest of them that we have in game. The ones which were used on the Merca class actually have homing torpedoes on them. So we're talking about Type 40 homing torpedoes. Now, I can only find the Merca 2s to have a second bank of these Type 40 homing torpedoes, but I don't understand why you wouldn't be able to put them on the Merca 1 ones, unless you were trying to limit it in some way. So this vehicle, when it comes to the game, could have homing torpedoes, could be one of the first ones to see them, but just understand that that is a guess. When it comes to the literature that I've looked at, only the Merca 2 had them, so even though they're pretty much the same machine, the problem is, depending on which one you decide to pick, it's either homing or Well, I don't know if the Merca 1 actually used them, because of the fact that I can't find anywhere any reference to what torpedoes it used apart from these Type 40s. So you're pretty much getting a machine which is a failed project, I think would be the best way to put it. The fact that there was only 18 of them completed after the Petier class, which was seen as a much better success, but that does not mean that this will be useless in game. Remember, one of the nice things about War Thunder is some of the faults that a lot of machines faced in real life, especially when it comes to engineering, are not really reflected in game unless we're talking about overheating issues when it comes to aircraft. This ship will not have the same problems that it had in real life when it came to its actual engines, which were the main issue. So overall, it should be really good in War Thunder, or at least it should be really fun. If you've played any of these Soviet battle boats, I think I would call them, they are incredibly powerful against their own class, which is kind of in the middle of destroyers and the battle boats, so they absolutely cane battle boats, and because of the rapid fire of the 76s, they do really well against destroyers as well. They do have an issue with survivability. These are kind of like you either aim really well and annihilate the enemy, or the enemy is going to annihilate you. And on top of this, they don't do too well against cruisers, just because of the lack of anything which penetrates too much. So for me, if this thing comes in at rank 2 or rank 3, I'm going to be incredibly happy to see it in the game at rank 2, but if it comes in at rank 3, it should still also be fine. What will be interesting to see is if they keep the standard tech tree equivalent where it is, the PR-159, and if they add the Merca 2 class frigate. I'm sure when it comes to later on, we will get stuff like anti-ship missiles. We know for a fact that they are in the files, and you can... I've actually shown a user mission in the past which has access to these anti-ship missiles, so therefore something like the Coney class, which is just one of these class frigates with the anti-ship missiles, definitely makes sense to me. It also has on top of it 4 30mm and 4 76.2 dual-purpose guns. So it pretty much gets rid of the rockets and replaces them with the missiles, which sounds incredibly tantalizing. And then you even have the Romanian Tetel class frigates, which could also make their way into game if you really wanted them to. But overall, I am happy that already we have a tech tree equivalent of a vehicle like this Squadron 1 in game. I want these ones to be unique, maybe even have some form of premium bonus, but the problem I'm seeing with them is if they are too unique, then we will have an issue where the average player who doesn't have a ton of time to spend on the game would not be able to get their hands on them. And I think personally it should be, available for everyone, since the idea of it is to try and promote it through the ideas of squadrons, community and everything like that. So standard tech tree vehicles as well, which are similar to them, would be very much obliged. And luckily for the Merca class, or as I said, the SKR Pr.35, we already have one, which is lovely to see. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.